Hi guys, welcome back. I'm so excited for today. I feel really nervous, really nervous, but at the same time very excited. Today's topic is going to be about swimming in water. I've titled it Deep Waters Part 2 because I did an episode where I shared my swimming journey once. This one is going to be a bit different. It's not necessarily about my swimming journey, but it's about the insights that I have received based on my experiences swimming. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're probably going to see me moving around. I'm literally kneeling on one of my big cushions because I didn't feel like sitting down. It felt better to just kneel and move around if I need to. So that's what you're going to be seeing me doing. Anyway, I wanted to share these insights because I feel like they might be useful for someone who is on the same journey as me. Maybe there's someone out there who's learning how to swim, or maybe there's someone who has experienced an incident that has made it nearly impossible for them to even gather up the courage to start swimming. It could be anything else, any other type of anxiety. So I'm hoping that this will serve you if you are one of these people. May this be useful somehow for you. I want you to remember that these insights are not something that I had from the beginning of my journey. The only thing that was clear to me was my intention, which is one of the insights. That was pretty clear. And everything else that has unfolded has literally just been me following my intuition and following through on that desire that I had. And so these insights are a result of that. I've literally just been looking at it from this bird's eye view of my experience, and I've sort of taken out these elements that have played a huge role in shaping my experience to this point. So it's really fascinating, and I think I'll just get right into it and start by just mentioning what these insights are. There are 5 of them. 5 insights and key points that might be useful to you. And then I'll go in depth, mentioning each one. I have some notes written here, so I sort of have some structure, but I'm noticing that I get stuck if I have too much structure, because there was at one point where I'd written everything down and then I got really lost in trying to navigate speaking and reading, So this time I have decided to just have key points for each insight, and then I'll just share it with you as I go along. So the 5 key points that I will be sharing with you are intention, exposure, safety, courage, and curiosity. They're in no particular order except for the intention that will always come first. And what you're going to see as you continue to listen to this is that these points merge with one another. They're sort of interwoven. So they're not so cut and dry as they appear, but I'm sharing them like this so you just get an idea of where I'm headed. So intention. Intention is the ignition, right? If you think of a car, you have to put your key in the ignition and start it. If you don't do that, you're not going to go anywhere, So your intention is literally what initiates things into something. It's your starting point. It's your why. Why are you doing this? What is it that is compelling you to? What is your motivation? What is your why? And I've mentioned this in one of the episodes that I also did. Knowing your why is super important because the quality of your why is literally it's important it's literally going to make or break your progress. And that's why it's important to know what your why is. So I'll just be using me as an example throughout all of this. I wanted to swim because I was tired of living in this country, Norway, and not having that possibility anymore. You know, if you know anything about Norway, the summers here are short and the winters are so long. And so, since the summers are short, we want to utilize that time as much as possible and enjoy that time as much as possible. And so, for the 20 years that I've lived here, is it 20? Let me see. Yeah, over 20 years actually. 23 years. For the 23 years that I've lived here, I've been seeing and witnessing people swimming in the summer, and I've been envious of this because of my fear of drowning. So, this anxiety, this fear has literally been my limitation. It has sort of robbed me of my enjoyment of summer. And not all of the enjoyment. I mean, I've enjoyed summer, but this could have been another added layer to that enjoyment. And so it became very obvious to me how our fears end up being the things that limit us in life. They limit our progression, and they limit us in terms of things we can experience that might even be good for us. So I wanted to learn swimming for me. I wanted to do it because I wanted to be able to swim and enjoy summer more, and just being in water without fearing the possibility of drowning. So it was very much an intuitive drive, an inner impulse. And this is why I think also that it's important to know what your why is, because of two distinct things, whether it's coming from you or whether it's coming from others. I'm a high believer that if your why is coming from you, it is much more sustainable in the long run than if it's coming from other people. And this is not to say that others cannot influence us. They can, absolutely. However, if our actions and our decisions are based on what other people say and their input, we might take action, but it won't be sustainable, because there will come a point where we might be like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not saying that's going to be the case for everyone, but this might happen. Whereas if your why is coming from you, you are more likely to continue onwards because you're having that inner drive. It's coming from you, it's an impulse in you. So it's easier to sustain that. So that's why I think it's super important to know what your why is. Very, very important. And so get your intention clear from the get-go. And once you have that clear, you can move on to the next step, which is exposure. Now, I have no clue how it's possible. Like, I don't know if it is. Is it even possible to learn how to swim without ever setting foot in water? Like, how is that even possible? I know that things like hypnotherapy exist, you know, and that is mostly in terms of people who have fear of flying, or people who maybe have a fear of spiders, a fear of snakes. They usually would seek out help maybe from a hypnotherapist to overcome this phobia. Like, I don't know so much about it. I read a little about it before I did this podcast. And I also saw something in relation to parts work, which is more of a psychological take on it, I guess, where you deal with the part of you that's afraid to swim, because the underlying theme here, I think, is that we have different parts in us that want different things. And so if you have a part that is afraid of swimming, that part might be the one that's affecting you more than the other parts that are totally okay with it. Like I said, I don't know much about this. I'm not going to go into this too much at all, since I'm only sharing from my experience. So for me, what I think is crucial is exposing yourself to the thing. Like, that is the most natural way, I think, for you to learn and change the effects of the event that happened. It is crucial for re-establishing your relationship with the thing, with water, for example, in my case, and with myself. So, I don't know, I feel like if you are doing it in a hypnotherapy session, for example, then you don't have that exposure, I guess. Or let's say, for argument's sake, the hypnotherapy works and the therapist manages to help you and your fear of drowning is totally gone. Then you can go swimming and you're like, yay, everything's fine. But then I feel like that non-direct exposure, or not non-direct exposure, but that non-exposure, as in you didn't learn by exposing yourself to the thing, it robs you from the direct experience of learning. Because when you are learning directly, you are informing yourself, yourselves, your cells, not selves, your cells, your body, you're informing all of you. And it becomes this beautiful dance back and forth, to the point where eventually what you learn from it becomes more than just you teaching your body that it's safe to be in water. There's a deeper aspect to this that comes through, and I'm not going to go too much into it, but I feel like for me and my journey, it wasn't just about overcoming fear of drowning, but it's also related to my relationship with water, and it's beneath that, it's also related to my relationship with life, you know. So if you do it the hypnotherapy way, then I feel like you rob yourself of the deeper levels of healing and knowing that can take place. So in my opinion, exposure, super crucial. Super crucial. And that leads me to the third point: safety. Safety, safety, safety. It's numero uno. Yeah, I feel like when you are learning to swim or partake in an activity that has triggered some aspects of you in the past, then being safe is of paramount importance. And for you, that might look like, if we use swimming as an example, since that's the topic, it might look like you bringing a friend along so you can practice swimming. Now, I didn't do that. And for me personally, it's probably because I think my soul just needed to have this experience for myself, because doing it alone has built so much of my confidence in ways that maybe doing it with someone else wouldn't have. And that's not to say I didn't bring someone else in later. Like, I learned in the beginning stages I was doing it on my own, and then eventually when I was in partnership, my current boyfriend now, I would swim with him, and he leveled up my experience as well. But the beginning stages, I was literally just practicing on my own, in my own vibe. You don't have to do it like me. You find what feels safe and good for you, and if that means bringing a friend, you do that. But safety first, because without safety, you end up risking putting yourself in dangerous situations. And I would say that I have an example of this in my own swimming expedition. Um, I did a long distance swim when I was at an event, and I mentioned this in the Deep Waters episode, the part 1. You can check that one out if you like for the whole story. I'm not going to go into all of it here. But in regards to safety, what I wish I had done that day was to inform people that were around that I wasn't super comfortable in water. Because what happened was they were swimming to this floating ridge, right? And it was further away to the point where I would need to pass my comfort zone in order to reach it. And everything went well, you know. It was a success story. However, this is the one piece that I learned was of vital importance in regards to not just my safety, but also everyone else's in a way, where I should have informed them, like, listen, my level of swimming is not that good, but I would like to go to that ridge. So if someone, one or two of you can, if you don't mind being close to me while I attempt this, while I swimming my own tempo, that would be great. Sharing this is a level of vulnerability, absolutely. But what that also does is it allows other people to respond accordingly. As in, they could decide for themselves, like, okay, wow, do I have the skills to support her should anything occur? And that's why that's the only thing that I regret, or rather I don't regret not doing it, but I've learned from that experience that it is vital to inform the people who are around you so they know where you're at in case something happens. Because what could have happened? What could have happened? Well, what if I had cramped? That's a possibility, and I didn't even take this into account when I was swimming, you know. I didn't take this into account at all. And yes, everything went well, but I would urge you to not do things exactly like me. You know, I feel like for me, maybe at that point, I had a certain level of knowing what I was capable of and not, and that's a good thing, yes. But still, knowing your capabilities doesn't need to impede on you informing people of where you're at. You can still manage it and still also inform others of your own level of your own skill set in terms of swimming, right? So for me, that was very important, and it's important for me to really emphasize this. It is, you have to keep yourself safe at all times when you're learning to swim, for example. And another reason for this is, like, if I take you back to my swimming experience, there's certain beliefs that are gonna pop up of not feeling safe, you know. And for me, what happened without my conscious knowing of it, when I almost drowned as a kid, the kid who had enticed me to go with her or him, I don't remember if it was a boy or girl, who had enticed me to go to the deep end, we were in a pool. They couldn't handle me holding them anymore, so they left me at the deep end, and I had to, like, get myself to the shallow. And so what ended up being created, belief system wise, is that water is unsafe, or at least not just any water, but the deep water where I'm not able to stand without being submerged fully. That is not safe. So I don't trust my body to keep me safe in that water. I don't trust water to hold me in that instance, and I don't trust other people because I got abandoned during that time. Now, these beliefs aren't true. They're sort of merged into one another, but they're not true. Like, water is safe. It's not unsafe in the sense of the word, unless there are crocodiles in there, but it's like then it's because they're crocodiles. So there's a risk that I might get eaten. That's different than being in a pool. There's nothing in the pool other than water, right? But my kiddie brain couldn't really assess the situation in a way that a grown up can. So I created these beliefs, and then they hindered me from further exploring, swimming, you know, at the depths. I kept myself at the shallow, I kept myself safe. And thus I also removed the potential fun that comes with, you know, being at those depths. So, you know, I sort of robbed myself at that time, robbed, but you know what I mean. Robbed myself of knowing that, you know, water is safe. Water holds me. And there's actually a law that explains this beautifully, and it's pretty logical. Anyone who observes what happens, you know, outdoors when you're in the ocean or you see boats or you see people, this is logical, right? There's a law that's called the law of buoyancy. Buoyancy. The law of buoyancy, basically, it's can also be termed the law of flotation. So what that means, what that law describes, is basically that if the body of water you're in weighs more than the object in it, for example, me, if the body of water weighs more than me, then that's a positive buoyancy, meaning I will float. If the body of water weighs less than the object in it, me, if it weighs less than me, then I'm going to sink. That's a negative buoyancy. So this is logical. We can see that when we see ships in the water. We see that when we see other people swimming and floating in the water, you know. Light objects float in water. Common sense, logical. However, this is a caveat. Just because it is logical and just because I can know this mentally, which is what I knew as a kid as well, and even in my adult years when I came to Norway, I know this logically that yes, I can float in water. However, my fear of drowning, my fear of dying, which is what it is essentially, that fear is much more stronger than this logical fact, right? So it doesn't help to just logically know things. There's a gap that needs to be bridged between my fear, which is really running the show and creating this anxiety, and the logical part of me that knows that yes, but I can float. So there's a gap here that needs to be bridged. And it's about rebuilding trust also in my body, you know, so that I know that yes, I am safe in this body can float in water, and water is safe, you know, it's not harmful or anything like that. And so to bridge that gap leads me to the next point. Bridging that gap requires courage. You gotta have courage. Most of you probably know that courage comes from the French word cœur, which means heart. It's heart, right? Heart, and you see that even in the expression in English, take heart means be courageous, be brave, right? And what is more braver than the image of a lion? Brave heart, right? The lion. And I feel like that will bridge the gap between my fear and this logical knowing. And how is it going to bridge that gap? Well, when you take on courage, you continue to expose yourself to the element, to the thing, to water in this case. Courage is what sets things in motion, right? You start to test your boundaries and your limitations and seeing how far can I go while still maintaining my safety. You are more daring, but you're also maintaining that safety because you're trying to establish and rebuild trust, right? So safety is always going to be present. You don't want to go too far to the point where you re-traumatize yourself, so to speak, or you create more harm than good. So I'll take you back to that example again of my long distance swim. The fact that I managed to swim that distance was courageous in and of itself, guys. Like, even for me, I still remember this feeling. Like, when I knew, and this was just in a blink of an eye, when I knew that, oh my God, I'm now crossing the point of no return. What kicked in there was courage. The part of me that knew that I could do it because I had been swimming and practicing and just being in water for many hours throughout the course of, I don't know, 2021. Because this happened in 2022. We're in 2023, yeah. So this happened last year, summer of 2022, when I did this long distance swim. And I had been practicing since 2021, or maybe since 2020, to be honest. That's when I started exploring a bit being in water more. But the swimming itself, the real practicing, I began in 2021. And so a year later, obviously there was something in me that knew that I could do it. And I feel like, yes, we can please prioritize being safe and at the same time follow your intuition. Follow your intuition. Your body knows its capabilities. Be safe and follow your intuition. So I was courageous and I swam to that floating ridge. And the only time I panicked was actually when I was now almost there, like just like two hands away, and I was like, oh my God, I'm almost there. And then I panic and I'm like, thank God that happened only when I was about to get there. Imagine if I had panicked halfway there. That would have been a disaster, right? So courage is what's going to drive us forward, and I feel like courage and the next point, which is curiosity, they sort of go hand in hand. They really do. So while you're hearing me talk about courage, you can easily apply curiosity here, but I'm going to go into curiosity soon too. But yeah, that long distance swim was definitely one of my examples of taking courageous action. And another example was when I dived in a pool, both in a pool and in a lake. The pool thing, I was swimming with my boyfriend at his local swimming pool, and of course there were diving boards there, and one of those days he was like, let's dive, and I was a bit scared. I'd never done that before, but I'd been in that pool. It's a deep pool already. I'd been in there, and we had also practiced just being underwater, which I found really scary, so I was very, very cautious in regards to that. But yeah, there were two different levels to the diving boards. The one that was closest is the one I tried first, and that was so exhilarating, and it almost feels like when you take courageous action, you're lifting the weights that you've been carrying that have been hindering your progress. And it's like, oh my God, I can do it. You get this feeling of accomplishment. And when you get that feeling, you do more of it. So I did the first level of diving, and it was so exhilarating that obviously I had to try the second one. I didn't dive in, I jumped in, because diving in is still something that I am a bit more wary of at this point. Like I said, I'm still on this journey, so I'm just sharing with you my experiences based on where I'm at today, but I still have some way to go. So, yeah, when I went to the highest dive board, oh my God, looking down there, it was super scary. I remember, like, It was really, really scary. But, knowing that I can float, right? That law, of course I can float. This time it's embodied, as in I have experienced it in the different ways that I've been swimming all this time. I've created more and more trust by this point in my body and in water. And also, my boyfriend is there. I'm not alone. So, yes, I feel safe. And so I did it. I jumped from that. I don't know how many meters it was, but I jumped from that board and landed in the water. And oh my God, it was so cool. So cool, so cool. And what all of this does is it increases my confidence. So, courage is your ally. Courage is your ally. If you're looking to feel confident for yourself, building that inner confidence, then there will be situations where you're required to be courageous. And another example was diving in a lake. So, this is an issue that I have that I'm still working on, where part of the reason why it was easier for me to jump into the pool was because the water is crystal clear. I can see right through it. I know that there is nothing in there that is dangerous. In a lake, well, let's just say my, what do you call it? My thoughts just go haywire. Literally, I start making shit up. Like, and I feel like that's just the fear, the anxiety being triggered. So basically, what happens is in the lake, there are two different lakes that I've been to with my boyfriend, and in one of them, even in the shallow ends, the safe zone, I was like reluctant to swim because I couldn't see beneath me. It was like, I know I'm standing here, but I can't see my feet, I can't see anything. What if there's something lurking in this lake that's gonna get me? Right? And that becomes a thing that hinders me in taking the next step. And it was the same thing with the other lake that we went into. The first one I eventually went in because I was like, come on, Chantal, this, it's not scary at all. There's nothing in here that's gonna get you, So I managed to swim in there, and it wasn't long till my boyfriend came too. The other lake, oh dear. I couldn't see in that one as well. I could see the place where it was shallow, but we were like on this rock, and you could actually just dive in the lake from that rock, and I couldn't see down there. So my boyfriend encouraged me to come and dive, and I was reluctant at first, so I didn't do it, but eventually I considered it. But what was it that was stopping me? Let me tell you. What was going on in my mind was the fact that if I were to dive, if I were to jump into that lake when it's like so murky I can't even see anything, and if something were to happen to me and I don't come up, my boyfriend is not going to be able to find me. Literally, how will he be able to find me? So that is what was coming up for me in that moment when I was standing face to face with this lake and my boyfriend's in there. But then there was something, again, because I've been experiencing water, exposing myself to it, swimming in it, floating, and learning to re-trust my body and the water. What was coming up as a counter to this thought, to sort of balance it out, to harmonize it, and maybe even diminish it a little bit, just enough for me to take a step in the direction that would be most beneficial for me, was, yeah, but remember when you dove from that pool? What happened when you dove, when you jumped into that pool from that height? You come back up. This is natural. This is natural. It's also in accordance to that law, because you weigh less than that body of water. You will naturally float back up. And that thought alone, like obviously this is happening fast and I'm like remembering these things and sharing them with you. So you see, that thought is what initially ended up helping me to just jump into that lake even though it was murky. And I did come back up. So this repeated experience of, when you expose yourself to something and then the result is always the same, right? The laws of nature are always, they will apply to you no matter you're in a pool or in a lake. The law will apply. And so when I expose myself to the water and I continuously learn this, then I start to feel even more safe. I can trust this body to float. I can trust water to hold me. I can trust that I will come back up. And that deepens even more my confidence and my relationship with water. And I did it twice. I did that twice and I was so happy and so proud of myself. And, it's a beautiful dance. Courage and safety, curiosity, all of these things. It's a beautiful dance. You take courage, it will lead you to very exciting moments in your life that you will never forget. So let's talk about curiosity real quick before I wrap things off. Like I mentioned, courage and curiosity sort of go hand in hand. What does curiosity do for us? For me, in my experience, curiosity is what helps us to explore our surroundings, right? We explore when we're curious. We play more when we're curious. You can even look at kids when they're curious about something, they engage with it, right? It ensures engagement and it continues to drive your behavior. So for me, like the desire, right? Your intention is always there. It's literally the firewood that keeps, you keep sort of adding flame, like adding wood to your fire. That's what intention does. So throughout all of this, your intention is what's keeping you going throughout all of these experiences. And so your curiosity becomes, okay, what else can I learn? How else can I navigate in these waters so that I feel safer? And these are the questions that I was mulling over in my journey. And I still do, even to this day, because I'm not yet completely safe, or I don't yet feel completely safe. It's like it's a journey that I'm still on. So curiosity is expanding my experience. It literally does. It expands your experience. It makes you see much more broadly when you're curious. And I feel like also in other areas of life, when we're curious about things, we are less prone to judge, because it's like, oh yeah, you think like that, I wonder why, what is it, you become more interested in knowing rather than in judging. In swimming, for me, being curious means I'm expanding what I know. Like what I know is like maybe close to my heart, but then if I take my arms out, that's curiosity expanding. And what that looks like is in terms of, for example, I started observing how, like my technique, how I swim. And then I would observe, I'd be curious about how other people are swimming. And I can give you this as an example. What I noticed is that when I am swimming, I have this shape that's like a concave shape, like a dip in my back. If you think of, like if you're watching me on YouTube, then you see my hand and you know what shape I'm making, this concave shape. If you don't know that word, then I'll try and explain it in a different way. If you're in if you're doing yoga, you're doing cat-cow position, right? So that cat position, that's how I swim. And I noticed that and this is where curiosity is super important. If you're curious about yourself, you start noticing different things, and then you can tweak it and change it and improve it. So I realized that the reason why I was swimming this way is because I feel like that will keep me afloat. It's a guarantee that I'm not going to drown, because once I put my feet down, then oh my god, I'm probably going to drown. Like so it's like I'm looking at all these different ways in which this fear and this anxiety pops up, right? So first it was like, oh, I'm unsafe in water, I need to stay away from water. But then you teach it that no, actually, you can float in water, you're safe in water. Okay, let's play a bit more. And then it's like, oh my god, no, I cannot have water in my face because then I panic, blah, blah, blah. I'll get to that one because I have a super cool example of that as well. But yeah, in this particular case, now it was like, oh my god, I need to have my back like in a cat position, like a concave shape, because then I'm guaranteed that I'm not going to drown. And so now I'm teaching myself that actually you don't need to. And the ways to do this is, first observing how other people are swimming. And, another key element here is you don't need to do it alone like I did if you don't want to. I think I mentioned this at the start. You can bring a friend or whatever, but like you can also have an instructor to teach you how to swim. I just wanted it to be free because it's super expensive, or at least I thought it was expensive. And I don't know, I feel like I gained much more value doing it on my own than having someone teach me like that. So obviously you can have someone to teach you, okay? But if you're like me, then yeah, do it this way. So yeah, I've started observing how other people swim and what they're doing. Like I've already gotten the hang of kicking my legs a certain way. So now I'm trying to apply that and not have my legs kick up above the surface of the water, to have my legs underneath the water and have that movement. Now I don't remember the styles of swimming. I think it's when you do crow that you kick your legs that way, or even yeah, butterfly. Is it butterfly? No, I think it's crow. The way you kick when you do crow is the way I kick, sort of. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but crawl. Is it called crawl? Yeah. Anyway, so this is now the next level of what I'm learning. Like, okay, how do I ensure that I stay in water longer but keep myself safe, and learn a technique that will help me do this? So that's where I'm at. And then there's another aspect of this where with the curiosity thing, it's like, okay, I'm noticing that another thing that triggers my anxiety, where I panic, is when I get water on my face. So I'm noticing that I would rather swim when it's still, when there's no wind, because when it's blowing, then there are waves, right? And if I'm in the water and it's waves, then I will naturally eventually have water hit my face. That incites panic in me to the point where I immediately get out of the water or go to the shore. So recently, I think this was last week, I was in the water and it was still and calm and everything, and I was swimming and, doing as I do, testing my boundaries and stuff like that. And then the waves came in because there was a boat that was passing. And I had the urge to go back, but this time I caught myself in that because, again, I have created safety. I have been practicing for a while. So I'm building my confidence, which means I can do these things step by step, slow and steady. So I decided that, okay, wow, what if I just stay put even though the water has hit my face? Because the water had hit my face at that point and I was like, oh my God, I have to go back, like that panic frenzy. But then I was like instantly, but what if I know how to float now? I know what to do. What if I just breathe in this process and calm myself while I am in it, while I'm in the water, instead of fleeing away from the incident and going back to safe ground. How about I create safe ground where I'm at right now in this process of having this water in my face? So I did that. And I breathed. I had already turned my back to go when I had this thought, and so I was breathing while floating in the same position, breathing, okay. And then I turned back and started swimming again, and then I got met again by a wave, and this time I had to go back. So I know there's still some progress to be had here, but that to me was a milestone. And this is the thing, when you expose yourself to the thing that has created anxiety for you, like swimming for me, you expose yourself to it, you play in the element, you watch the water, see the water, watch people swim in the water. I don't know if I mentioned exposure. I hope I did, because that was the key point. Exposure. I think I did. But I'm getting lost in this trail of excitement. But yeah, when you have been in the water, swam in the water, watched the water, established your relationship with the water, then these things will come up and you can progress slowly, So I know that I'm going to continue testing. I don't know what point I was going to go to here, but whatever. I'm going to continue testing this newfound knowledge, and it's all based on curiosity, right? Because I'm curious. I want to be able to be in the water and be safe in the water and create that trust even while things are going on. So I'm slowly building that relationship, and I'm so excited and curious to see what comes next in regards to this. So there you have it, folks. This is my journey so far, and just to summarize, have your intention. Make sure it's coming from you. Be clear about what that is, because it is what is going to sustain your progress, especially if it's coming from you. Exposure, super important. Be in the water, be in the thing, engage with the thing that triggers you, that makes you feel uncomfortable. But keep in mind safety. Safety is important here. Super important. And yeah, be curious and be courageous, because you need to take heart when you're doing things that create this fear inside of you. Be safe, do it at a slow tempo, and take heart so you can expand your horizons, your limitations, your boundaries. You keep expanding them to the point where your safety zone is also increasing in tandem with the boundary expansion. I hope that this will be useful to you, and if you found this interesting or that it's resonating, then please share. Please share. Thank you for listening or for watching if you've been watching this on YouTube. I wish you all a pleasant day, and see you next time. Bye.